Right now, house sparrow populations across Europe are collapsing, not slowly declining, collapsing. In the UK alone, sparrow numbers have dropped by over 60% since the 1980s. Scientists have blamed cats, they blamed habitat loss, they blamed pesticides, but one researcher wasn't satisfied with those answers because the collapse was happening fastest in cities, dense urban cities, exactly where the towers are. Alfonso Balmori is a conservation biologist based in Valladolid, Spain. He didn't visit 30 parks in one day. He visited the same 30 parks once a month for 4 consecutive years, every Sunday morning. Same route, same time, same method, counting birds, and simultaneously measuring electromagnetic radiation levels at each location. After 4 years, the numbers told a story nobody wanted to hear. In low radiation areas, 42 sparrows per hectare. In high radiation areas, fewer than 2. Same city, same species, completely different numbers. He published the findings in 2007. The study held up, and almost nothing changed. Now 5G is being rolled out across every major city on Earth. Frequencies higher than anything these birds have ever encountered. And the question that Balmori raised 20 years ago is more urgent now than it has ever been. Because the birds are still disappearing, and the towers are still going up. To understand why this matters, you need to understand something about how birds navigate. Birds don't use GPS. They don't follow roads. They use the Earth's magnetic field. A robin flying from Scandinavia to Africa is reading invisible lines of force running through the planet itself, and the biological system it uses to do that is extraordinarily precise. Inside a bird's eye are specialized proteins called cryptochromes. These proteins react to the Earth's magnetic field at the quantum level. They allow the bird to literally see magnetic north as a visual overlay on its field of vision. It is one of the most sophisticated navigation systems in the natural world, and it runs on the same frequencies that wireless technology transmits. In 2014, a team of researchers at the University of Oldenburg in Germany conducted a landmark study on European robins. The birds were placed in a controlled environment during migration season. Under normal conditions, they oriented perfectly. Then the researchers introduced a weak radio frequency field, not a powerful signal, a weak one, weaker than what your phone produces. The birds lost their orientation completely. They couldn't find north. They spun in random directions, disoriented, confused. The moment the signal was switched off, their orientation returned. The lead researcher, Henrik Moritzen, described it as the birds going suddenly blind to the magnetic world they had always lived in. That study was conducted using frequencies from older technology, 2G, 3G era signals. 5G operates at significantly higher frequencies, with significantly more towers, placed significantly closer together. And nobody has fully tested what that does to a bird trying to find its way home. Nobody officially, anyway. Because one researcher already tried to find out, and what he discovered didn't just concern him. It concerned the people who were supposed to be protecting wildlife. In 2013, a review published in the journal Environment International analyzed 113 peer-reviewed studies on radio frequency electromagnetic fields and their effects on wildlife. The conclusion was stark. In 70% of the studies, RF radiation had a measurable negative effect on birds, insects, and other animals. 70%. That is not a fringe result. That is a consistent pattern across more than 100 independent studies. And the most vulnerable endpoints were reproduction and development, eggs that didn't hatch, chicks that didn't survive, breeding pairs that abandoned their nests for no visible reason. Balmori had documented this himself years earlier. In his 2005 study on white storks in Valladolid, he monitored 60 nests across the city. Some nests were close to mobile transmitters. Some were further away. In nests with high radiation exposure, storks showed something deeply unusual. They didn't leave. They just stopped functioning. Adults stood motionless near the nest. Some nests were never completed. Chicks in high-exposure nests had significantly lower survival rates than chicks in low-exposure nests. The birds weren't fleeing the signal. They didn't know what was wrong. They just deteriorated. Quietly, without explanation. Now here is where it gets complicated. In 2021, the U.S. Department of the Interior sent a memo to federal authorities. In it, they stated directly that the FCC's radiation guidelines were not designed to protect wildlife, not birds, not insects, not ecosystems, only humans. The agency responsible for regulating the towers had never been required to consider what those towers do to everything else living under them. That memo was sent, logged, and then, for the most part, ignored. But there was one more detail buried inside that document. Something specific about 5G frequencies and migratory birds. Something that even the researchers who had spent decades on this called genuinely alarming. The detail buried in that memo was about frequency bands. Specifically, the 1.6 GHz range. That frequency sits inside a window that researchers had flagged years earlier. It overlaps almost precisely with the resonant frequency of the cryptochrome proteins inside a bird's eye, the same proteins that allow birds to read the Earth's magnetic field. In simple terms, 5G signals in certain bands don't just interfere with bird navigation the way older signals did. They target the exact biological mechanism birds use to orient themselves. Henrik Moritson's team at the University of Oldenburg had already demonstrated that even weak radial frequency fields could completely disable a robin's magnetic compass. Now those fields are everywhere. On every street corner, on every urban rooftop, transmitting continuously. And migratory birds don't migrate around cities. They fly through them. Every spring and every autumn, billions of birds cross directly over the most densely 5G-saturated environments on Earth. Disoriented, unable to read the field they were built to follow, some researchers believe this is already showing up in the data. North American bird populations have declined by nearly 3 billion individuals since 1970. That figure comes from a 2019 study published in the journal Science, led by researcher Kenneth Rosenberg at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. 3 billion birds. Gone. Multiple factors contributed. Habitat loss. Pesticides. Cats. But electromagnetic pollution remains the one factor that has never been formally investigated at a national scale. Never funded. Never prioritized. The towers keep going up. The frequencies keep climbing. And every spring, the same birds that have navigated this planet for millions of years are flying into a sky that is no longer what it used to be. Alfonso Balmori is still working, still publishing, still counting birds in the same city where he started 20 years ago. The sparrows are still declining, and the question he asked in 2005 has still not received a definitive answer from the people with the power to actually look. If this is the kind of story you think more people should know about, subscribe. There are more of them.